That's how you should want to stop your motorcycle. Smooth and controlled. And in this video, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into how to do that. Intro. Keep it loaded, keep it loaded, keep it loaded, keep it loaded. Very nice, I'm looking at the camera. Very nice, good, good, good. Preloaders, V.I.Preloaders, welcome back to the channel, guys. Always a pleasure to have you guys here with me, and you notice by now, or at least you should. For those of you that have never been to this channel before, welcome to you as well. My name is Robert. I'm a retired NYPD Highway Patrol motorcycle lieutenant, and the name of this wonderful channel is Be the Boss of Your Motorcycle. This is my girl Angel. Angel's my 2019 Road King Special. All right, so guys, this is definitely not the first time that you're going to hear me talking about stopping your motorcycle smooth and controlled. As a matter of fact, I've already made a video about it. I'll put it up here. And in my practice session videos, and if you guys are not familiar, we do practice session videos on this channel. And these practice sessions are filmed in their entirety. So they're not short videos, but they do have chapters, so you can kind of go to look at what you want. But I always advise people, don't skip around, right? Because you're going to miss some information, a lot of good information in those videos. But the first thing we do, the first exercise we do in those practice session videos are short starts and stops. And when I do private lessons, regardless of why people tell me they're there, I start them out with short starts and stops. Because you don't know what you don't know, bringing your motorcycle, and by your motorcycle, I mean whatever type of motorcycle you ride, it's important that you guys know that this is not just about touring motorcycles, but you feel your shortcomings more the heavier the motorcycle is. But once you learn how to ride these motorcycles properly, the weight of the motorcycle is really not that important. But knowing how to stop your motorcycle properly and controlled, it's a lot more than just braking, right? But the problem is people don't understand that. And that's why stopping a motorcycle is such an adventure. You know, heart rates go up. People dread stopping. People love to be in the wind because then the motorcycle is doing the work as far as keeping it upright. But once you slow down 1 to 10 miles per hour, yeah, it's all on you. And of course, that includes coming to a stop. And most people are coming to stops on their motorcycles. They're using the front brake, or what I think they like to do the most is to come out of speed into a stop. And the longer they can stay at speed, the better, because then the motorcycle is doing the work as far as keeping it up. And then they'll come to a nice abrupt stop. You'll see the fork, a lot of compression in the fork. That's not a controlled stop. Or if they don't have the ability to come out of speed, then the last bits of that stop are terrifying. And that's when you see feet coming out. And if they stop with the handlebars turned and grab that front brake, or even if they do it with the rear brake, with the handlebars turned, that's when we get drops, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I want to kind of dive deeper than I have in the past about how to come to a smooth stop. So the first thing we have to realize, guys, is, I say this all the time, what keeps the motorcycle upright at slow speeds? And I ask this question at every practice session, every private lesson. And if this was a question on a test, everybody would get it right. Well, not everybody, but most people would, because most people know sufficient power to the rear wheel is what keeps these machines up. With sufficient power, it is designed to stand up and go straight. That's what it wants to do. That's what it always wants to do. That's why most motorcycle riders just ride straight and make slight turns, right? They don't really like turning the handlebars, because once you start turning the handlebars like this, the further you turn your handlebars, the slower you have to be going, which means now it's on you. You need to know the proper technique to be able to do that. And that's the friction zone, guys. You need to be able to be comfortable and confident riding in the friction zone. And for those people that like to display their ignorance to the world in the comment section by saying, anytime they see people riding in the friction zone, oh man, there goes that clutch, you're gonna burn out your clutch. It's just ridiculous. You know, this motorcycle has a wet clutch, as most of them do. It's designed to be ridden in the friction zone. This is not a truck, doesn't have a dry clutch, although there are motorcycles that do have a dry clutch. Doesn't mean you can't do slow speed maneuvers on those, but you gotta be very careful. You gotta make sure you let them cool off and stuff like that. You still have to do that with this too, but you have a little bit more time, a little bit more, you could be a little bit more aggressive with these types of motorcycles, and I'm talking about motorcycles with a wet clutch. But keep in mind that when your motorcycle is moving without power to the rear wheel, which is what most people do coming to a stop, you pull the clutch all the way in, and there's nothing wrong with that. Your motorcycle in that state is like a coin rolling across the table. A coin with momentum will roll and roll and roll. But once it starts to lose that momentum, what is it going to do? It's going to start going like this, right? It's going to start to waver. That's your motorcycle. Your handlebars are going to start going like this. And eventually that coin is going to fall. And you know, it does that thing. Well, your motorcycle is not going to do that thing, but your motorcycle will fall without sufficient power to the rear wheel. And when we feel that feeling that it's about to fall, our instinct is to put our feet down. So I tell everybody that comes out here, we stop this motorcycle when we want to stop, not when we feel falling. The feeling of falling does not equal time to stop, because if it does, that's when you get those abrupt brakes and your foot's going to come down like this. So anytime you stop your motorcycle and your foot comes down like this or like this, anytime any of that happens, that's not how you should be stopping your motorcycle, for a number of reasons. One of them is sometimes the ground doesn't provide proper grip. Sand, gravel, whatever it is, and it doesn't take a bunch of it. If you put your foot down like this, the odds are going to be increased that if there's any type of grit on the ground, that your foot can slide. And if your foot slides and now you're trying to catch this motorcycle, this is how we get hurt, right? But if you stop and your foot comes down like this, it's much less of a chance that you're going to have an issue, right? So that's why we want to be controlled, see, because this is controlled. This is not. This is preventing falling. Oh my God, right? That's a panic moment. So again, you want to always come to a stop. Well, your goal is, because it's not going to always work out. We have to remember we're on two wheels. But either like that or in stride, like that. That's your goal every time you stop. And the beauty of this, guys, is you have to stop your motorcycle. I don't care what you ride. The more you ride, the more we have to start and we have to stop. So we should be very, very proficient in those two things. But this is about education. So we're going to go over that. I already mentioned the friction zone, right? Okay, so without giving too much length in what I'm saying, I'll just give it to you this way. When we're coming to a stop, sometimes pulling in your clutch and letting it roll to a smooth stop is fine, because in that moment, the balance all works out. All right here, clutch in, let the bike coast, rear brake, rear brake, rear brake, rear brake, rear brake. See, right there, I didn't need the friction zone. The balance worked out great, but I'm still controlled. I'm using the rear brake progressively, and when I'm ready to stop, I finish it off and then put this foot down. Still not using that front brake. Rear brake, rear brake, rear brake, rear brake, boom. This is about timing too, you know. You need to be applying the proper pressure as you progress in the stopping, right? And this depends on when you want to stop. It's important that you guys know that there's a between, there's a gray area, there's a middle, and I'm referring to your braking. So a lot of motorcycle riders, again, they want to try to keep speed as long as possible. So it's no brake, and then brake, and that's why it's abrupt. When that should be gradual, it should be progressive. Brake, 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 brake. But Robert, you just said without power to the rear wheel, the bike's going to start to waver, and then eventually it's going to fall if the balance doesn't work out. So how am I going to brake, 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 and still be able to stay upright? The friction zone. But Robert, if I'm trying to stop, why would I be in the friction zone? Guys, it's impossible, right? Again, sometimes the balance works out, but other than that, it's impossible to keep this motorcycle upright and steady with no power to the rear wheel. It's impossible. And that's what most people do when they're coming to a stop. They don't have any power going to the rear wheel because in their minds, I'm trying to stop. But remember, I'm not saying be high in the friction zone, but you have to be at some level in the friction zone to keep this bike up, but at the same time, not overpower the rear brake. Remember, the rear brake and power to the rear wheel, they work together in harmony. They keep your bike upright and rigid at that very slow speed. You need that. Otherwise, you don't have anything keeping the bike up. So, as much as this might not seem like it makes sense, what I'm about to tell you, it does. As you're coming to a stop, guys, you could pull the clutch in, all the way in. You don't need any power. The balance is working out because you're still at a good speed, 8, 7, whatever. Once you get down to 2 or 3 miles per hour, when you start feeling that, as soon as you start to feel it being unsteady, don't wait, because then you just have to open your hand more. But as soon as you start feeling it, address it right away. Address it as soon as you feel it. How do I address it? I'm gonna open my hand back into the friction zone, right? Just a little. And again, I have to go by what I feel. If I feel like I need more, I'm gonna give it more. But I'm not gonna give it more than I need. At the same time, I'm applying the rear brake. So my foot's going down on the rear brake progressively. And if necessary, my hand's opening a little bit more, because I wanna keep that power, keep that power, keep that power. And once I'm ready to finish that stop, I complete it with the rear brake. And then as I'm putting my foot down, pull a clutch in. And once your handlebars start doing this, the way you deal with that is friction zone, see, they straighten out, friction zone, open my hand up more, brake, 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 boom. So that, see what I mean? I know you can't feel it, guys, but as I'm coming to that stop, I feel like, uh-oh. But as I feel it, I go back into the friction zone. The more I go into the friction zone, the less my handlebars are doing this. It's making the bike stand up. You're still gonna get a little bit of movement, of course, because we're still moving slow, but it's not gonna be anywhere near the way it was with no power. And then I start applying more rear brake, and as soon as I'm ready to put my foot down, I put my foot down, finish it off with the rear brake, and pull in the clutch. So you'll hear my RPMs up all the way until I stop. Then, boom, nice and smooth. So sometimes I'm in the friction zone all the way until I stop, but I'm in the friction zone lightly so that the rear brake could win that battle, right? I'm gonna give more rear brake than power to the rear wheel, right? And it's perfectly fine. Remember, guys, we're not doing it the length of a parking lot. It's coming to that stop in that moment. It's no different than dragging the brake while you're making a U-turn or anything that you're doing slow speed-wise. It's no different than that. But people need to understand that at that slow speed, you need the friction zone to keep this bike up when the balance is not working out. But I got news for you. Even if the balance is working out, guys, depending on how long that stop is, at some point it's gonna stop working out. So sometimes I'll go into the friction zone right before I'm gonna put my foot down, just to make sure that that stop is smooth. I want it to be smooth. I don't wanna get to the last part of it, and then in that moment, I feel the bike starting to fall. Because again, guys, it's on 2 wheels. So it wants to fall with no power at that low speed. That's what it wants to do. But we don't want that, right, guys? So I hope this helped you out, guys. I want you to definitely try this. Yeah, for some people, I had a private lesson out here, and she was like, this is just not making sense in my brain to be opening my hand into the friction zone as I'm stopping. But the more we did it, the more she realized, oh, wow, because again, we're always in our feelings out here. Once she felt it, and she went like, her face was like this, whoa, because her stop was so smooth, because she opened up the clutch into the friction zone while she was braking, boom. And this is a coordination thing too, guys. A lot of times people are doing stuff out of order. They're not giving enough brake, and they start putting their foot down, and that's when you see their foot tap the ground 2 or 3 times like this. Because they're not concentrating, they're not realizing, if I'm putting my foot out to stop, I should already have enough pressure on the rear brake so that when I put my foot down, the bike's not moving anymore. Because we should never have our feet on the ground while the bike's moving. We don't need our feet on the ground when the bike's moving, because power to the rear wheel, we already discussed that, we agreed. Power to the rear wheel is what's keeping the bike up. So we don't need our feet while it's moving. All right, guys? All right, so remember, guys, friction zone. Oh man, I love living in the friction zone, because the friction zone is good to me. It keeps this bike up at slow speeds. And I say this all the time, guys. I want you to hear this. Repeat it to yourself in your head if you need to. As long as I provide sufficient power to the rear wheel, this motorcycle will not fall. If I feel falling, I'm going to address it as soon as I feel it. Even if you wait, it doesn't matter. But again, I want you to have to make very small movements. The longer you wait, the bigger the movement's going to be. I'm referring to the movement of the clutch. Remember, we always preload and keep it loaded. So when we open our clutch into the friction zone, we don't have to worry about the throttle. We're already loaded for the most part. But sometimes if you're coming to a stop and you pull a clutch all the way in, You don't need to be loaded. You're just coasting, coasting, coasting. If you get to the end of that stop and you feel like you're gonna need the friction zone, preload that throttle and keep it loaded and then go back into the friction zone. All right, guys? All right, listen, love you guys. I hope this video helped you out. Please go out and try this. You're gonna see how much smoother your stops are on this motorcycle and how this exercise of bringing your motorcycle to a smooth stop and understanding that concept, how that's gonna help you with so many other different things on your motorcycle regarding riding in the friction zone at slow speeds. All right, guys, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I know this video helps out a lot of people, and I know there's a lot of people that watch these videos and watch them pretty regularly, but they're not subscribed. So help me out, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, that helps as well. Share these videos. I say this all the time, I'm one guy with a YouTube channel, but if you guys know that this helped you out, share with other motorcycle riders so that we can chip away at this 2% of motorcycle riders only knowing how to do this. Spend more time being thankful for the things that you have, guys, less time complaining about the things that you don't. Seat time doesn't equal practice time. And if you have time to ride your motorcycle, you have time to practice on it. Until next time.